Igno-Rinse.
At the time of this recording, exactly 1 week had elapsed since the televised release of Dan Reed's Leaving Neverland, a controversial expose profiling the alleged child sexual abuse of Wade Robson and James Safechuck at the hands of the undisputed king of pop, Michael Jackson. And as one might expect, the reactions were a bit mixed, to say the very least.
Said this was
I don't believe a word of anything in this documentary.
Okay, Wendy.
Yeah. Like, if the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigates you for 10 years and they don't find anything, I can't sit here and watch two people just give a testimony and say, yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah.
What do you think, man? Does that change your opinion on Michael Jackson?
It was hard to watch, bro.
Yeah, I know. But do you believe those guys?
I don't see any reason not to believe him, honestly.
I would recommend everybody to look at it and watch it. But I also want to remind people, this is not a court of law. That's a documentary.
She interviewed him in 1993, interviewed his family when he died. Now, so they cashed in on him when he was living. Now they're cashing him when he's dead.
There is tons of evidence that the family has, just mementos of...
Why did you believe them?
Why did I believe them?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
The subject of belief, or perhaps more accurately, how we properly discern the narratives that compete for our beliefs, has become a hot-button issue as of late. For all you die-hard moonwalkers out there, it's my sincerest hope that this video not be interpreted as an indictment on a dead man's character, but rather an examination of the prevailing narratives used to defend it. Only God can judge Michael Jackson. I cannot.
Trip, man. Whatever happened to pimps, man? What if Michael Jackson was a pimp? Should be him and Tito be riding around in a Cadillac and shit? Slow down, Tito. Slow down, Tito. Damn! Is that my hoe over there sitting on the curb? Let me out. Come here, girl. I said, come here, girl. Where my money? How much you got? Mike, I'm sorry. All I got is $100 bill. Girl, you've been out here all day and all you got is $100 bill?
This set in particular would go on to open many doors for Tucker, ultimately making him a household name in the black comedy circuit. But even as he ascended into the realm of Hollywood superstardom, his MJ impersonations would make frequent appearances on the big screen. But why is this joke so effective? The answer is its use of irony as a comedic device. Irony is defined as a state of affairs that seems deliberately contrary to what one expects and is often amusing as a result. The joke's premise requires that we envision Michael Jackson as this ruthless flesh peddler, hell-bent on exploiting the weak and the vulnerable for his own financial gain. The joke's premise contradicts the audience's core belief of Michael Jackson as this meek, childlike, unthreatening, effeminate, eccentric, far too harmless to even hurt a fly. We've seen similar depictions of irony used in times past. For all you Chappelle Show fans out there, the second season Wayne Brady sketch comes to mind. When we expose the contradiction of two or more conflicting ideas, we very often find comic relief. When we attempt to reconcile this contradiction, however, we can just as easily find ourselves in a state of cognitive dissonance.
Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch?
Cognitive dissonance theory was first publicly examined by social psychologist Leon Festinger in his 1956 case study, When Prophecy Fails. The study documents Festinger's infiltration into a group called the Seekers, a UFO-based doomsday cult formed by the inspired writings of a Chicago housewife. The woman claimed that final judgment would be levied on December 21st, 1954. This is when catastrophic flooding would ravage the earth, destroying all life as we know it. Salvation would only be possible if you found yourself amongst the chosen few willing to heed her warnings. That chosen few would be saved by alien spacecraft before the world's end. Well, the world did not end, of course, and when the woman's alleged hour of judgment came and went with no flooding or disaster, Festinger documented the cult leader's response. To his surprise, rather than accepting the reality of her failed predictions, she simply doubled down. The woman was overtaken by a convenient spell of divine inspiration and revealed to a group of onlooking devotees that their faithfulness had softened the hearts of their alien masters, and because they were diligent, the world had been spared. Fessinger would go on to recognize this response as a byproduct of the woman's personal cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance can be defined as the internal struggle that occurs when our core values and beliefs are in direct contradiction with our actions and behaviors. To resolve this internal game of tug-of-war, we do one of two things. We either change our actions or we change our beliefs. When no aliens show on the expected day of judgment, the subject of Fessinger's study feels an intense degree of cognitive dissonance. Her entire world has been rocked. Her religion has been exposed as a sham, and now she can no longer logically defend it. But rather than changing her behavior, she resolves this dissonance by diverting her attention to new information that downplays her old belief in the failed prophecy. In their efforts to defend the legacy of Michael Jackson, many supporters go through intense bouts of mental gymnastics to either justify or wholly dismiss information, ideas, and beliefs they know in their hearts to be true. It's not uncommon to witness this behavior amongst everyday fans. However, it's a bit more curious to watch this happen amongst industry insiders.
First, your reaction to Leaving Neverland.
My reaction to Leaving Neverland was incredible. I remember having the time of my life with Michael. I was about 15 years old, and I remember him just sitting down with me, being like, this is kind of like what you got to do, Aaron, in your future, and, just stay focused and stay driven, always be a perfectionist. I also went to the same vocal coach as Michael, Seth Riggs, for many years. So I really idolized Michael the way that you see Wade Robson and that other kid, whatever the hell his name is. When I see someone that is like, okay, you're a grown man, and when Michael Jackson was alive, you are backing him, you are up his ass, you are kissing his ass, you are there to testify for him under oath, and then when he dies, you decide that that's a good time to come out. No, what you're doing is you're actually stomping on an icon and a legend's grave. You're stomping on his grave. I just feel like why not do it when he was alive, man? Why not do it when he was being accused of all of these molestation charges? Why not do it then? Because and actually indict a perpetrator.
I guess, is it at all possible that what they're saying could have happened?
Not based upon my experience.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is cognitive dissonance in action. In his efforts to uphold his defense of MJ, Carter denies even the smallest possibility of Michael's guilt. What's worse, he attributes this doubling down to the knowledge he's gained from his own personal experiences. Now, what exactly are those experiences? Aaron Carter's emergence onto the pop culture landscape came on the heels of the massive success of the late 90s boy band craze, where such acts as the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC topped the musical charts and rose to superstardom.
The other day, I was hanging with some friends, going around the room talking about a favorite noise. I said I had a brother in the Backstreet Boys.
If you weren't there to witness it, I don't think it possible to accurately describe the collective impact these groups had. It may be equally impossible to deny the impact of the creators of both groups, one Lou Pearlman.
So this Lou Pearlman guy, apparently one of the stories, for example, is one of the boys says, I'd like to get in the band, etc. How do I do that? He's in a robe. He opens up his robe and says, now how do you think you're going to get into the band? Wow. And apparently a lot of the kids did it because they didn't know any better. Nick Carter apparently slept with Nick Carter, and then, there's this guy, Phoenix Stone. He was an early member of the Backstreet Boys. He told Vanity Fair that what Pearlman did with Nick Carter was, quote, definitely inappropriate. Nick's mom, like I said, wouldn't get into specifics, but she said certain things happened and it almost destroyed our family. Tim Christopher, a member of Take 5, that's a group I don't know either, recalls that during a sleepover at Pearlman's house, the music czar swan dived onto his and another boy's bed and wrestled with them while wearing only a towel which came off. Ugh. We were like, ooh, Lou, that's gross. But what did I know? I was 13, said Christopher. Rich Cronin, lead singer of LFO, another group I don't know, told him of an ancient massage technique that if I massage you and we bond in a certain way, it'll strengthen your aura.
Whatever, dude.
Now that we've exposed a bit of history on the man behind the bands, let's now examine former NSYNC star Lance Bass's admission of Pearlman's abuse in light of Aaron Carter's adamant defense of Michael Jackson.
This also happens to men too. I mean, it's a two-way street. It has happened to me. When I was 16, 17 years old, when we started, there was someone that, we worked with that was inappropriately touching us. And I was even aware then at 16 that this guy was a pedophile and he was touching me oddly, but I didn't feel victimized at the time because I was very aware of it. But it happens to us too.
Did you say anything?
No, I mean, with the guys, we would talk about it. We would kind of joke about it, but it's not a joking thing. But as a kid, I don't know. It was odd. But I'm glad that we were aware of it and we didn't feel victimized at the time. Yeah.
I don't think it possible to stress how significant this admission is in light of the current climate of skepticism surrounding the Leaving Neverland documentary. When aspersions are cast on the timeliness of the allegations levied by Wade Robson and James Safechuck, it should be noted Lance Bass took his time too. At a very mature 35 years of age, Lance Bass would make his very first public admission of sexual abuse on October of 2015. To put that into context, that's 16 years after both NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys sued Pearlman for defrauding them of over 50% of their collective earnings. 16 years after NSYNC would part ways with Pearlman officially, leaving his transcontinental label imprint for Jive Records. 9 years after Bass summoned enough courage to come out of the closet and publicly embrace his homosexuality. And nearly 7 years after Pearlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison on conspiracy and money laundering charges following the collapse of his $300 million Ponzi scheme. And despite the fact that Bass was approaching middle age with nearly 2 decades of freedom from Pearlman's grasp, his confession was still a feeble one. He dismissed the significance of his abuse, and almost as if taking responsibility for his own molestation, repeatedly stated that he never felt victimized at the time. How ironic that Bass would resolve this cognitive dissonance some 3.5 years later with the release of his own documentary exposing a now-deceased Pearlman for the creep that he actually was. The parallels are fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple of things I would like people to take away from this film. One is a huge cautionary tale of, just being taken advantage of, and especially for new entertainers getting the business, to really watch who you're getting into business with.
Sound words of advice, but if Aaron needed them, he wouldn't have to turn to his former label mate, or even his older brother for that matter. All he had to do was take an honest assessment of his past. In November 2003, Michael Jackson was arrested and charged with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent for the purpose of committing a felony. Just 1 year prior to this arrest, a 14-year-old Aaron Carter would visit Neverland Ranch for the very first time. In 2011, he'd recount this experience to Daphne Barak of OK Magazine.
Did the same during blood? Same?
I mean, there was definitely things that happened, that were just different, weird. He drank, drank around me a little bit, and, he...
And you were like, what, 14, 15?
Yeah, I was 14 years old, so, and, yeah.
But did he ask you to drink?
Yeah, he did.
I didn't see any drug addictions.
I personally didn't see any drug addictions. I never saw any Injections, nothing like that. No, I never saw it.
You looked all the time there. You looked same.
The time that I spent with him, yes, he was fine, you know. But who knows? I mean, you know, people, you know, the human body builds tolerance for things, you know. The human body, this is how it is, you know. So who knows? I mean, he could have been doing something, and I didn't have a clue. So, you know.
But you spent a short time with him, actually. You spent 2 days with him. 2 days, you can hide things.
Yeah.
Okay, drinks, okay, but pills.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, he could have, you know, walked in the bathroom, took it. You know, it takes 2 seconds, you know.
It's very clear that things weren't 100% on the up and up when Carter visited Michael. Off the record, he resolves the dissonance he feels for lying to Daphne by telling her the complete truth.
There's another story. There's something else that happened. And
I also have a story for you today.
And it involves drugs. And I'll tell you this.
And I saw the alcohol as well.
Me too. I don't know if this is something I'll ever want to talk about. Maybe not. But at 15, I smoked weed with my mom. Hands down, swear to God. And I won't tell you because I trust you, obviously. But this happened. It really did. It really did.
Carter would go on to reveal a few more intimate details about his stay at Neverland Ranch.
He wanted me to stay in this room. So he got a cot, a bed, and I stayed on the cot in this room.
And what
it must have been like 5 o'clock in the morning.
I have also a story for you, but nobody knows that.
5 o'clock in the morning. He's on my bed. He's on the foot of my bed. And I wake up. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you know, 15 years old. You know, what are you doing? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know. I'm in his bed and I'm like, okay.
Scared, but like, you know, we don't like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean,
and what about his kids? I don't understand. Like, he was doing all this regular day.
They were in the room right next door. The room right next door.
It was on that set, 1984, that actor Corey Feldman says that he met Michael Jackson and the two became friends. So in the wake of the startling allegations made in the film Leaving Neverland, made by the two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, Feldman initially criticized the film, calling it one-sided, without evidence, saying his friendship with Michael Jackson was never inappropriate. But now the actor is clarifying some of his comments, saying, quote, Michael was my friend, but that does not mean I condone any harmful behavior, physical or mental. This is new information to me. It takes me time to absorb and process. And we want to welcome now actor Corey Feldman. Thanks for being with us. Let's pick up with that last line. Absorbing, processing. Where are you with all this?
Well, as I mentioned in my statement, it is obviously a very emotional time for me, and this is a very emotional process for any survivor of abuse, anybody that's been through these things. To, first of all, I ask people to put themselves in my shoes. You know, you're a kid who has endured sexual abuse, and during those times, I'm looking to somebody like Michael Jackson as a friend, as a big brother figure, and he was that person to me. However, as you're friends with this guy, all of a sudden you start to hear more and more accusations being thrown around by various people, and it comes to a point where, as an advocate for victims, as an advocate for changing the statutes of limitations to make sure that victims' voices are heard, it becomes impossible for me to stay virtuous and not at least consider what's being said and not listen to what the victims are saying. This is very important. We must give them their voice. We must allow them to speak. And therefore, we also must consider all sides of this, even as uncomfortable as that may be.
Okay.